The reptilian Princess Tirazel sobbed as the heroic human soldier Daniel ripped through the Draconis rebels with bursts of plasma fire, her elegant dress torn and face bruised from the brutal alien claws battering her scaly skin. It was 2247, and humanity had been locked in a bitter war with the Draconis reptilian empire for 3 long years. Special Forces soldier Daniel Jenkins, one of the Alliance's finest, embarked on a top-secret mission deep into enemy territory on the Draconis homeworld of Xylax. His goal: secure vital intelligence that could finally give the humans an edge and turn the tide of the bloody conflict once and for all. But the operation went sideways from the start. Daniel's dropship took heavy fire as it descended through the planet's atmosphere, barely touching down in one piece. No sooner had his squad hit the ground than they were swarmed by hostile Draconis troops. Daniel fought bravely through the chaos of the ambush, blasting reptilian warriors with his pulse rifle, but in the confusion of combat, he found himself cut off from the rest of his unit. Alone in uncharted enemy terrain, Daniel had to stay focused. Pushing deeper into the rugged alien landscape, he scouted for any sign of his squad or strategic targets. But he never expected to stumble upon Princess Tirazel. She was under attack, a pack of vicious rebel Draconis surrounding her, beating her, intent on taking her hostage to use as leverage against her father, the Emperor. Daniel couldn't just leave her to that fate. His instincts kicked in and he leaped into action, cutting down the rebels with honed skill and superior human technology. Tirazel looked at him with pure fear, a strange alien creature, like something out of a nightmare. But as Daniel removed his helmet and reached a hand out to her, his voice gentle and kind, she sensed that perhaps there was more to these humans than her people believed. Hidden together in a remote cave, Tirazel reveals the truth to Daniel. Extremist factions are plotting a coup against the Emperor in a bid for power that would plunge the Draconis Empire into turmoil and turn the war into a lawless bloodbath. She begs for Daniel's aid, certain that if he can get her home safe, she may be able to convince her father to open peace negotiations with the Alliance. But Daniel hesitates. The rest of his team is still out there, and he has a mission to complete. A mission that could save countless human lives. If he abandons his duty to help this alien princess instead, and fails, it could mean disaster for humanity. Yet looking into her eyes, he sees genuine desperation and hope for a future without war and death. Before he can decide, his comlink crackles to life with an emergency broadcast. His squad has been captured by Draconis forces. Now Daniel is torn between his duty and his conscience, knowing that the choice he makes in this pivotal moment will shape not only his own fate, but that of 2 warring civilizations on the brink of destruction. The clock is ticking. Will this be the day a single human soldier changes the course of history, or the day humanity's last hope for victory slips away? Princess Tirazel's life and the future of the galaxy itself hangs in the balance as Daniel faces his ultimate test of honor and valor behind enemy lines. Daniel's mind raced as he weighed his options. His squad was still out there, likely fighting for their lives. But the desperation in Tirazel's eyes, the chance to end this war and save countless lives on both sides, it was an opportunity he couldn't ignore. With a heavy heart, he made his choice, ate his. "I'll get you back to your father," Daniel said, his voice steady with grit. "If there's a chance for peace, we have to take it." Tirazel nodded, a mix of relief and fear on her scaly features. Together they set out into the treacherous jungles of Xylax, leaving the safety of the cave behind. The dense foliage and twisted roots made for slow going. Daniel took point, his pulse rifle at the ready, senses heightened for any sign of danger. Tirazel followed close behind, her clawed feet navigating the uneven terrain with practiced ease. As they trekked deeper into the jungle, Daniel's curiosity got the better of him. "What's it like, growing up as a Draconis princess?" he asked, glancing back at her. Tirazel was quiet for a moment. "Sheltered," she said finally. "My father always kept me protected, hidden away from the realities of war, but I knew our people were suffering." Daniel nodded. "I joined the military to protect my people too. Guess we're not so different after all." Hours turned into days as they pushed on, narrowly avoiding rebel patrols and hungry predators that stalked the undergrowth. In the brief moments of respite, huddled around a small fire or taking shelter beneath broad leaves, they shared stories of their worlds, their families, their hopes and dreams, beyond the conflict that had consumed their lives. A bond began to form between them, an understanding that transcended the barriers of species and culture. Daniel found himself admiring Tirazel's strength and compassion, while she marveled at his bravery and selflessness. But the peace was shattered when they neared the outskirts of the Draconis capital. A hail of plasma fire erupted from the tree line as rebels ambushed them, their numbers far greater than anything Daniel had faced before. He returned fire, downing 2, then 3 of the attackers with well-placed shots, but they kept coming, closing in from all sides. Daniel's rifle clicked empty and he drew his sidearm, shielding Tirazel with his body as he fired again and again. A searing pain ripped through his shoulder as a plasma bolt found its mark. Daniel staggered but kept fighting, even as his vision blurred and his strength waned. Tirazel screamed his name, her voice distant over the roar of battle. Just as all seemed lost, a deep battle cry echoed through the jungle. Draconis soldiers burst from the undergrowth, their weapons spitting fire as they engaged the rebels. Daniel watched through hazy eyes as the tide turned, the Emperor's troops driving back the enemy with ruthless efficiency. As the last shots faded, Tirazel was at Daniel's side, cradling his head in her lap. "You're safe now," he mumbled, his words slurred. "Your father—" Darkness claimed him before he could finish. Tirazel shouted orders at the Draconis soldiers, demanding they bring Daniel to the palace for treatment. They obeyed without question, shocked to see the human who had saved their princess's life. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness as Draconis doctors worked to heal his wounds. Their technology was beyond anything he had seen, repairing flesh and bone with remarkable speed. When he finally awoke, days later, he found himself in a lavish chamber within the heart of the palace. Word of his bravery had spread like wildfire. Draconis citizens whispered his name with awe, the human soldier who had risked everything to save their beloved princess. But it was Emperor Hector himself who stunned Daniel the most. The imposing Draconis leader visited him personally, offering words of gratitude and respect. "You have done more for the cause of peace than any diplomat or politician," Hector said solemnly. "Perhaps it is time we end this senseless conflict." Daniel felt a surge of hope, sensing that change was finally within reach. But his thoughts quickly turned to his squad, still languishing in Draconis captivity. He pleaded with Hector to release them as a gesture of goodwill, a first step on the road to reconciliation. To his surprise, the Emperor agreed. Within hours, Daniel's squadmates were brought to the palace, battered but alive. They embraced him fiercely, marveling at the turn of events that had brought them here. But even as the first fragile seeds of peace were sown, Daniel knew their struggles were just getting started. There were those on both sides who profited from the war, who would stop at nothing to see it continue. And with his actions, he had made powerful enemies, painting a target on his own back. As he looked out over the alien city, Tirazel at his side, Daniel knew the road ahead would be long and perilous. But for the first time in years, he dared to imagine a future beyond the battlefield, a future where humans and Draconis could coexist in harmony, and he vowed to do whatever it took to make that dream a reality. Daniel stood at the balcony overlooking the sprawling Draconis capital, its alien architecture a stark reminder of how far from home he truly was. The weight of his new responsibilities as liaison between humans and Draconis pressed heavily upon him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself for the challenges ahead. A gentle hand touched his shoulder. Daniel turned to see Princess Tirazel, her scales shimmering in the pale light of Xylax's twin moons. "You seem troubled, Daniel," she said, her reptilian features softening with concern. "Just thinking about everything that's happened," he replied. "It's a lot to take in." Before Tirazel could respond, a Draconis attendant approached and bowed low. "Ambassador Jenkins, Emperor Hector requests your presence at the feast." Daniel nodded, straightening his formal attire, a strange blend of human and Draconis fashion that felt awkward and restrictive. He and Tirazel made their way to the grand banquet hall, passing groups of curious Draconis nobles who whispered and stared. The feast was unlike anything Daniel had ever experienced. Exotic foods and drinks covered long tables, while Draconis musicians played haunting melodies on instruments he couldn't begin to identify. His squad mates sat at a table near the front, looking as out of place as he felt. Emperor Ector's booming voice cut through the din. "Friends, we gather to celebrate a new era of peace between our peoples." As Ector continued his speech, Daniel scanned the room. He noticed General Krivax glowering from a far corner, his eyes fixed on Daniel with undisguised hatred. Suddenly, movement caught Daniel's eye. A cloaked figure darted through the crowd, heading straight for him. Time seemed to slow as Daniel registered the glint of a blade. "Daniel, watch out!" Tirazel cried. Before he could react, Tirazel threw herself in front of him. The assassin's blade found its mark, sinking deep into her abdomen. She collapsed into Daniel's arms as chaos erupted around them. Acting on pure instinct, Daniel lunged at the assassin, tackling him to the ground. They grappled fiercely, rolling across the floor as panicked guests fled. Daniel managed to pin the attacker, pressing his own knife to the assassin's throat. "Who sent you?" Daniel growled. The assassin's eyes darted nervously. "I'll never talk!" Daniel pressed the blade harder. "Your friend is dying. Tell me who's behind this, or I swear I'll—" "Krivax!" the assassin blurted out. "It was General Krivax!" Emperor Ector loomed over them, his face contorted with rage. "Guards! Arrest General Krivax immediately!" As Krivax was dragged away, Daniel rushed back to Tirazel's side. Her breathing was shallow, her scales pale. "The blade, poison," she whispered. Daniel cradled her head gently. "Hold on, Tirazel. Just hold on." He turned to the Emperor. "We need that antidote. Now." Ector nodded grimly. "I will make the arrangements." The next few hours were a blur of tense negotiations and agonizing waiting. Finally, a rebel representative arrived with the antidote, exchanging it for their captured assassin. Daniel watched anxiously as Draconis doctors administered the cure. Slowly, color returned to Tirazel's scales. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on Daniel's face. "You saved me again," she said weakly. Daniel took her hand in his. "We saved each other." Over the following days, as Tirazel regained her strength, Daniel found himself spending more and more time at her bedside. They talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams of a peaceful future. One evening, as the twin moons of Xylax cast their glow through the window, Tirazel turned to Daniel with tears in her eyes. "I never thought I'd see the day when our peoples could come together like this," she said. "You've given us hope, Daniel. Hope for a future without war." Daniel smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. "We'll build that future together," he promised. As Tirazel recovered, Emperor Ector wasted no time in solidifying the newfound alliance. In a grand ceremony attended by dignitaries from both species, he formally named Daniel as the human ambassador to the Draconis Empire. Daniel accepted the position with a mixture of pride and trepidation. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger. Krivax's allies still lurked in the shadows, and there were plenty on both sides who wanted the war to continue. As he stood on the balcony once more, looking out over the alien city he now called home, Daniel felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. But he also felt hope. Hope for a future where humans and Draconis could live in peace. And he vowed to fight for that future, no matter the consequences. Daniel's promotion to human ambassador accelerated the peace talks, but not everyone embraced the change. Whispers of dissent echoed through both human and Draconis ranks. "Ambassador Jenkins, urgent news!" A Draconis aide burst into Daniel's office, scales glistening with sweat. "General Drayson has gone rogue. He's stolen experimental weapons and attacked the capital." Daniel's blood ran cold. He sprinted to Emperor Ector's war room, mind racing. The Emperor's hulking form loomed over a holographic display of the city, red indicators flashing where Drayson's forces struck. Your Majesty, I can stop this, Daniel pleaded. Let me confront Drayson. If we escalate, everything we've worked for is lost. Hector's eyes narrowed. Very well, human, but you won't go alone. Minutes later, Daniel found himself leading a mixed squad of humans and Draconis warriors. Princess Tirazel, arm still in a sling, insisted on joining despite her injuries. They raced through burning streets toward the spaceport. The stench of ozone and burning flesh filled the air. Civilians cowered in doorways, scales and skin alike singed by weapons fire. At the spaceport, chaos reigned. Drayson's troops had dug in, using stolen plasma cannons to keep Draconis forces at bay. Daniel's team moved in, human and Draconis fighting side by side. Drayson! Daniel shouted over the din of battle. This ends now! A familiar voice answered, Jenkins, you traitor! Plasma bolts sizzled past Daniel's head. He dove for cover, returning fire with his own rifle. Tirazel moved with surprising agility, her royal guards forming a protective circle around her. The battle raged on. Human weapons clashed against Draconis technology. Bodies fell on both sides. Suddenly, Daniel spotted Drayson making a break for a waiting shuttle. He sprinted after him, but a stray shot knocked him off balance. Daniel! Tirazel cried out. Time slowed as Daniel saw the plasma bolt arcing toward him. Then Tirazel was there, shoving him aside. The blast caught her full in the chest. Daniel's world narrowed to a pinpoint. He unleashed everything he had, tactics honed by years of combat, combining with raw fury. Drayson's troops fell before him. When the smoke cleared, Drayson lay disarmed at Daniel's feet. But the victory felt hollow as Daniel rushed to Tirazel's side. No, 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 he muttered, cradling her broken form. Tirazel's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Daniel, promise me. Anything, he choked out. Peace at any expense, her voice faded to a whisper. Daniel clutched her hand. I swear it. I'll make sure this wasn't for nothing. Tirazel's last breath rattled in her chest. She went still. A hush fell over the battlefield. Humans and Draconis alike stared in stunned silence at their fallen princess. In the days that followed, Daniel threw himself into negotiations. The Unity Pact took shape, a lasting alliance born from shared loss. As he watched the first memorial to Tirazel unveiled, Daniel felt the weight of his promise. He would honor her sacrifice, no matter what it took. Years passed as Daniel Jenkins worked tirelessly to maintain the fragile peace between humans and Draconis. He shuttled between worlds, brokering deals and smoothing over conflicts. But despite his efforts, cracks began to form in the alliance. Reports flooded in of devastating raids on border colonies. Daniel watched footage of settlements reduced to ash, bodies littering the streets. The attackers moved with brutal efficiency, wielding weapons that defied conventional defenses. We're calling them the Vixari, Admiral Chen briefed him. Their bioweapons eat through our shields like acid. Casualties are significant. Daniel clenched his fists. We need a united front against this threat. I'll speak with Emperor Hector. That's just it, Chen interrupted. There's been a coup on Xylax. Hector's been deposed. Daniel's blood ran cold. He raced to the communications hub, hailing the Draconis capital. The face that appeared on the screen wasn't Hector's wizened visage, but the hard-scaled features of Supreme Commander Nakra. Ambassador Jenkins, Nakra's voice dripped with disdain. Your Unity Pact has left us vulnerable. The Draconis Empire mobilizes for war. Nakra, please, Daniel pleaded. We must stand together against the Vixari. Divided, we'll fall. But Nakra cut the transmission. Daniel slumped in his chair, mind racing. He couldn't let it all unravel, not after everything they'd sacrificed. He gathered a small team, the few who still believed in unity. They snuck onto a freighter bound for Xylax, weapons concealed beneath crates of supplies. As they neared the planet, alarms blared. Vixari ships swarmed the system, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly light. The team fought their way to the surface, battling both Nakra's forces and the invading aliens. Daniel led the charge through the war-torn capital. Buildings crumbled around them as Vixari weapons tore through the city's defenses. They pushed towards the Imperial Palace, determined to confront Nakra. In the throne room, they found the Supreme Commander barking orders to his generals. Daniel raised his weapon. "It's over, Nakra. Stand down." Nakra laughed, a cold reptilian sound. "You fool. This was always the plan. Let the Vixari weaken us both, then seize control in the aftermath. I'll rule what remains of both our empires." A firefight erupted. Daniel's team fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell. Daniel watched in horror as his last ally, a grizzled Draconis veteran, took a blast meant for him. Daniel cradled the dying soldier. "Stay with me. We can still—" "No," the Draconis wheezed. "You must preserve the pact. Stop the War Masters before it's too late." The soldier's eyes glazed over. Daniel looked up, seeing Nakra towering over him, weapon raised. In that moment, clarity struck him like a thunderbolt. There was only one path left. He dove for a nearby console, fingers flying over the controls. Alarms blared as he accessed the codes for both human and Draconis doomsday weapons. "What are you doing?" Nakra roared. Daniel met his gaze, voice steady. "Saving us all." The twin sons of Xylax cast long shadows as Daniel initiated the sequence that would reshape the galaxy. He closed his eyes, the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. In the end, it came down to this: destruction as the only road to lasting peace.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.